When it comes to unstoppable animals, the African bush elephant pretty much sits at the top like it's a paid premium DLC. In fact, nothing alive can really challenge it. No lions, no hippos, and no rhinos are willing to sign that contract to fight one. So in order to actually test the limits of this 6-ton bulldozer, we gotta scroll way back in nature's timeline. I'm talking about millions of years back to the age of dinosaurs. And no, not the T.rex this time. We already cooked that fight. Today, we're bringing in something way weirder, way spikier, and way more of that back in my day lore. Enter the Stegosaurus, the dinosaur that evolution made going through its emo phase, with a tail that acts like it skipped therapy just to make the Allosaurus hurt. So yeah, in today's video, we'll be discussing who would win in a fight between an African elephant and a Stegosaurus. On one side, you have nature's version of try me and see what happens, with the IQ that can make a chimpanzee sweat. And on the other, you have a Jurassic wrecking ball that solves its problems by impaling them. And with that, I'm gonna answer this who would win question with actual science and biomechanics, not some fan ideology. And to be real honest with you, the winner really might not be who you'd expect. Anyways, let's establish some ground rules for this fight. Let's say this 1v1 is between both angry adults in their prime and actually want to duke it out. So no running away or anything like that. And where shall this battle take place? Well, let's say this happens in an open field, so pretty even terrain here, okay? Now let's see who wins this fight. Size and physique. First up, we have the African bush elephant, aka the walking infinity gauntlet of the African savanna. Yeah, it has that prime Mike Tyson unstoppable aura. In fact, they're so strong that they've been seen throwing cars around like toys, knocking over trees for a snack, and bodying rhinos as if it was its little brother. And when you have that I can manipulate the very environment around me type of strength, you know it's absolutely huge. So just how big is the African bush elephant? Well, bulls are said to average around 6 to 7 tons and stand up to 11 feet tall. And once the 6-ton unit goes into musth, which is when its testosterone increases by 60 times its normal amount, it has the temperament of a toddler with the philosophy of pain from the Akatsuki. The slightest thing can piss them off, and their responses are so scary that they give hippos heart attacks. In fact, did y'all know that a bull African elephant charging at full speed of 7 meters per second is calculated to produce around 147,000 joules of kinetic energy, which, by the way, is the same thing as getting hit by a car going 33 miles an hour. But physique-wise, this thing is built like a mobile fortress. African elephants are very tall, deep-chested, and stand on those column-like limbs, not those dainty giraffe legs. Basically, their center of mass is pushed way off the ground, but for their size, they're actually pretty compact and hard to topple. They just simply have that boulder-like body. In fact, their build is actually really good for being a battering ram. Their skull is basically a reinforced frontal shield, being very dense that evolved to smash into other elephants without knocking themselves out. And if you pair that up with its compact 4-legged stance with a very muscular upper body and back legs, you've got a 6-ton physics lesson that's really good at bulldozing. But here's a tiny little secret the elephant is packing in its metaphorical trunk: its mammalian physique. Basically, elephants are endothermic mammals with high aerobic capacity and good neuromuscular control. So translation, for an animal the size of a truck, elephants would have far more precise movements and better control over their power distribution than the ancient plated lizard. And you can thank evolution for that. Oh, and speaking of animals that evolution had too much fun with, let's move on to the elephant's opponent, the Stegosaurus, aka the prehistoric traffic cone collector with a tail that failed at anger management. When people hear the word dinosaur, this guy is essentially the top 5 that pops into their heads. But just to be clear about something though, the Stegosaurus lived in the late Jurassic of North America. So no, it was not squaring up with the T.rex. In fact, the T.rex is closer in time to the invention of the computer than it is living alongside the Stego. But back in its day, the Stegosaurus was dealing with things like the Allosaurus, which was a multi-ton theropod way scarier than any lion. So yeah, it definitely was not soft. once, and the spikes proved it. I mean, it looked like it was going through its emo phase, but what were they actually used for? Well, despite their daunting appearance, recent studies suggest that they were used for mating displays and thermoregulation due to the high vascularization density. So, translation? They look cool and helped regulate heat, but wasn't used for defense though. But given all that, just how big was our spiked buddy? Current estimates put the average Stegosaurus ungulatus at around 4 tons, roughly 23 feet long, and stood about 8 feet tall at the hips. So surprisingly, the elephant is larger than the Stego by a good 2 tons, and has a height advantage. But the Stego does have a longer body and a lower center of gravity, and that does have some perks. But build-wise, the Stego is weird, not gonna lie. Its hind legs are longer than its front, which gives them that sloped, rump-high, shoulder-low look. Essentially, the back and hips sit tall, but its head is dangling low on its short neck. So most of its bulk is packed over its rear half, that being its big pelvis, thick hips, and a barrel belly on stout limbs. And that means it was great for one main thing, anchoring and swinging that tail. But alright, people, this isn't a modeling show for how creative evolution can be. It's a fight. So how do these two actually use their builds? What are their weapons looking like, and who fights smarter when things get ugly? Well, this brings me on to my last point, which is weaponry and fighting IQ. Alright, so we already know the elephant is built like a 6-ton bulldozer, but what is it actually doing in a fight with a Stego? Well, first off, unlike the brainless ancient pineapple opponent, the elephant actually has a mind behind the muscle. You see, elephants are among the smartest animals on the planet. They can problem solve, remember specific threats, and change tactics mid-fight. So in a 1v1, that means it's not just spamming charge like a video game NPC. It can angle off, see openings, and adjust/problem solve to something that swings back. But now let's talk about weapons. You see, those sturdy ivory tusks? Yeah, in mature bulls, they can grow up to 6 feet long, and they're used like a Super Saiyan crowbar. You see, in real elephant fights, tusks are used mostly for pushing, hooking, and shoving to gain leverage. Not really much for jousting like medieval knights, though I do gotta say, they can definitely puncture an animal like a rhino if it was placed right and had enough force put behind it. And against a Stegosaurus, our trunked 6-ton friend charging full speed carries a stupid amount of momentum. A solid tusk shot to the flank, belly, or leg of the Stego could absolutely break ribs or be used to help them wobble the dino. And with that thick, shock-absorbing skull that's used to body other bull elephants, you bet it could ram without heavy head trauma. But how does that stack up to the Stegosaurus? Well, to be fair to our prehistoric cone collector that has that back in my day aura, it was not bullying lions. It was dealing with the Allosaurus, which is a multi-ton predator that makes big cats look like warm-ups. So yeah, the Stego wasn't some helpless lawn ornament and was perhaps a little more battle-hardened. And with that, it developed its main weapon, its tail, aka the scythe from Nightmares. You see, at the end of the Stego's long tail was 2 pairs of big spikes, each around 2 feet long. Oh, and guess what? The tail did not have that stiffening tendon that many dinosaurs had, which means that it was very flexible and could whip around in wide arcs. And if you pair that up with its wide mobile hips, the Stego is capable of pivoting quickly and swinging its tail very fast. In fact, we even have fossil receipts of just how deadly its tail was. Essentially, there have been Allosaurus vertebrae with puncture marks from our spiky dino friends. So all those leg days must be really coming to use. You know, fast pivots and nasty tail swings. But here's the problem. The Stego is basically running on this ancient dinosaur walnut-sized brain. So its adaptation mid-fight really might not be the best, especially going against one of our smartest animals alive. And here's the thing where it gets even more awkward going against the elephants. There's something called leverage, and the elephant, having such a high shoulder and compact body off the ground, would be pretty hard to hit the crippling areas like the face or spine. Basically, the Stego's tail is best for hitting low legs and the lower belly, not the top of a tall animal. But I mean, if the elephant tried to kneel down to flip it, it, which it would almost certainly have to do in order to topple it, then perhaps it could hit the neck or vital areas. And let's not forget, the elephant does have that exposed underbelly the stego could reach, and that's pretty rich in blood vessels and organs, and that could be a world of troubles for our trunked friend. So anyways, to sum it all up, on paper, we've got a 6-ton thinking battering ram with tusks and a reinforced skull versus a walking spiked mace that's great at punishing legs and bellies, with stabs to expose those missed workout days. But is that tail and lower center of gravity enough to keep the tusk tank off it, or does the elephant's size, brains, and momentum carry it through the spikes? Well, people, I think it's about time we determine a verdict. Alright, we have our stats. So, who would ultimately win between an African bush elephant and a Stegosaurus? Well, given everything I presented, I think the elephant would win more often than not. Now, it's not going to be an easy fight, don't get me twisted, but the elephant just has a lot of advantages we cannot ignore. So first, we already talked about its positioning leverage, right? The elephant is just very tall, and basically the Stego's tail would have a very hard time reaching actual vital points. I mean, it could theoretically hit the elephant's leg / ankle, but that's not really too crippling. It's gonna hurt, but I can just simply see the elephant using its superior brain to kind of problem solve. It would acknowledge that the tail is pretty dangerous, and given that, it'd probably just try to face the stego more head on. Since the elephant can make a lot more precise movements too, it would have an easier time positioning itself in front of and maintain that leverage over the Stegosaurus. So here's how I think the fight would go, right? I can see the elephant squaring off to the Stegosaurus. The Stegosaurus is kind of trying to position its body a little bit more sideways so it can hit it with its tail, but I just see the elephant mainly staying in front of the stego, the front portion of which the tail can't really bend all too well to, and charging in and trying to flip / off bounce the stego. Now, yes, the stego could maybe hit the elephant once or twice with its tail, but I don't see it being too instantly crippling to where the elephant would die. And once the elephant charges in and rams at the stego, realistically speaking, it would be able to toss around and push over the Stegosaurus. I mean, it could use its tusks to kind of get underneath the front limbs and go from there. Maybe try hitting the, again, exposed short head. Could literally smack around the dino's head with his tusks from there too. But overall, the stego would need a very precise angle and timing, and given that the elephant is charging in, it would already be busy trying to stay balanced, and tracking a charging 6-ton battering ram that's actively trying to avoid the tail is not going to be an easy feat. The elephant eventually, I just see getting the oblique angle and being able to bulldoze the stego to the ground, and the elephant tramples and wins. But I mean, if elephants can do that to cars about the same size as the stego, and it can do that to other elephants, it'd be more than able to topple the dino, especially knowing the dino's awkward posture. So yeah, tell me what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and check out the rest of my content.